Almost 10 years ago, I auditioned and got the gig for Brit Floyd. It was a dream multi-instrumentalist gig, but it really required a lot out of me. On top of guitar, percussion, bass, and keys, I was regularly juggling soprano, alto, tenor, baritone, and clarinet. Honestly, on such a great and fun gig, this was also a little bit of a maintenance nightmare. I knew kind of right away that if I wanted to keep my sanity and wanted my horns to be able to survive on the road, I had to ditch my stock single cases and get something with real protection. Enter the BattleCases Triple Saxophone Case. This case has been through absolute hell. It's been thrown onto airport conveyor belts, packed tightly under a bus, thrown onto the back of a truck about 1,000 times, and even survived a fall 10 feet off the back of a truck on a rainy day, thanks to a careless forklift operator. But because of how well this was built, those horns took some damage, but really not as much as they would in a lot of other cases. Had I not had that case, this situation could have been a lot worse. So what actually is a battle case? Well, at its core, it's a Pelican 1730 transport case. For those outside of the gear world, Pelican makes military-grade, airtight, watertight, practically indestructible cases. In fact, if I remember correctly, one of the original marketing videos on the BattleCases website was actually a tractor trailer running one of these over. This thing features 8 heavy-duty latches, 2 massive carrying handles, and polyurethane wheels. Now, a quick heads up for all of my tall players. Because of this case's dimensions and wheelbase, walking with this case is just a bit awkward, but it's a small price to pay to transport all of this so well. Almost 10 years ago when I bought this case, it ran me about $1,000 plus shipping from Southern California where the company was based. It was a massive investment early on for me in my Brit Floyd career, but it completely changed how I traveled and how easy of a time I had on the gig. But the real magic of the battle case is not just the Pelican outer case, it's really the custom interior. I've seen a lot of other companies try to DIY this or use like a floppy, lower grade, different density foam than this, but it never came out as good as these did. The thing about cases, and this goes for not just this case, but any case, but when you're buying a case for any instrument, when the instrument has an opportunity to move around inside the case, like if the fit is not snug enough, that's actually where damage happens. BattleCases used an incredibly rigid, dense, custom CNC routed foam that fits the horns like a glove. Aside from spaces for tenor, alto, and soprano saxophone, there's a lot of space for everything else here, mouthpiece slots, a lot of accessory space, etc. But even as good as this case was, I did a custom modification to it the moment that I got it. Originally, this left section all the way over here came with a removable block that you could pull out and put a whole hard shell clarinet case in there. Instead, my father and I sat down with a hot knife and cut out some neck slots so that I could put those in there because I really didn't want to get this beautiful case and then still have to put my necks like inside the bell with a pouch or whatever. So we were able to do this. It was very easy and quick. I actually forgot to mention one thing about this case too, is that I had to modify it for the particular weird soprano that I have. Take a look at this bell. Not a straight bell, not a full curve soprano, but this came more measured for one of those. The foam was obviously nice and really tight around it, and it's got this little foam slot that you could pull out just in case you have, a fixed neck rather than a separate neck, which is really nice. But because of that bell, which in the bottom side of the case wasn't a huge issue, but in the top side of the case, it was a little bit of a thing. I had to modify. You can see that little black rectangle up there, which is felt. And I cut some of that foam out just to make sure that I could fit that soprano bell in there. It actually did work, but it was something that I missed when I was kind of drawing up this script. The front slot here is actually intended for a flute case, but because I didn't play flute so often on Brit Floyd, I ended up using this, as you see, for just like some spare accessory things. I've got reeds all through here, some, my BG cleaning supplies, etc., just like a bunch of little stuff. And then there's another section over here on your right where this was a foam block that you could pull out or even leave in. And I made some space in here just for a lot of my like larger but everyday use kind of stuff. neck straps or whatever else. Sometimes I would keep my in-ears in there. And also way deep inside, another modification that I made was actually I cut a small slot at the bottom of this cavity, and originally I fitted a tile into it so that I could track it. And then eventually it became, you know, Apple AirTags when those came out. When you're traveling with this much unique and expensive stuff all over the place all the time, you know, that's a little insurance that goes a long way. Now let's talk about the reality of gigging with kind of a vault like this. So this case itself is slightly oversized and maybe about 10 to 11 pounds overweight. This comes in 61 pounds fully packed for me. So that really means that most times that I was traveling, the production company was ending up spending maybe somewhere around $200 each way to get this case where it was going. Thankfully, we didn't fly a lot. It was mostly a bus and truck tour. But, you know, something that you should know if you're thinking about, oh, I should buy this case and fly with it. That's probably going to add up over time, so make sure someone else is paying for it. So all that to be said, after almost 10 years with this case, it's actually ready to be retired. I'll definitely say I beat the absolute out of this thing, and it did its job perfectly. But look closely at the interior. Over a decade, even the high-density foam starts to break down. Now it's starting to dry rot a little bit to the point where I have to vacuum up the foam particles out of the case so they don't get into my pads and mechanisms. As many of you know from DMing me on Instagram, where this whole thing kind of started recently, BattleCases is currently no longer selling these cases and their website is offline. However, I recently heard from someone who wrote me on Instagram that they were in touch with the current owner and that they were looking for new suppliers so that they could be making these cases again. So I guess there's a glimmer of hope that they might return. At this point in my scenario, I don't have another major tour until, so I have a little bit more time to decide about what I need to do for a case, and I'm glad to have that kind of time to find a replacement. You know, buying the Pelican, the 1730 is fairly easy to do. It's not awful in price, all things considered, but the very difficult part is getting someone to custom cut this foam. I've had some initial conversations with a few companies about doing this for me, and most companies that I've talked to so far weren't able to do it, but I have a few recommendations that I kind of need to chase down to see if they may be able to do this for me. So thankfully for the moment, while I don't have to fly with this, I can continue to use this for a lot more of my local gigs where it requires 2 or 3 horns and some accessories. Anyway, thank you so much again to the Instagram community for prompting this video. It was kind of strange on my Instagram account to see, 4,000 likes on a picture of this case from a gig a couple of weeks ago, but it inspired this video. You can find me on Instagram at Ryan Saranich, where I post a lot of saxophone and multi-instrumentalist type of things. Okay, I have to ask one thing. If you like this content, please like and subscribe. We had some really huge gains actually in the past month, and it's getting easier and easier to create content for this channel. Also, if you're an Amazon user, there are some Amazon affiliate links down below that help to support this channel. You obviously don't have to buy those things. It's all kinds of the stuff that I use to create this content. But if you use those links, a little support goes to this channel in the process. Anyway, thanks for your curiosity about this case. I hope it's informative for you, if nothing else. And I'll see you on the next one.